Today I wanted to talk to you about some spline washers that we're deburring. What we do with these spline washers is we actually radius these spline washers. So what I'm talking about here are like elliptical reducers, harmonic drives, wave generators. They go by some other names as well, but they got these really small little splines on them. Some people call them teeth, some people call them splines. They're a zero backlash device, so they don't really have a true gear shape to them. They're more of a spline. So what typically happens is people hand deburr these. It's really hard to get a precision radius on these splines through traditional methods. So we can't use the normal like grinding wheels that we use or coated abrasives. So now we have to go in there and kind of use more of a nylon brush or a Scotch-Brite. And what we're really trying to do is we don't really want to get down inside the spline, because we're going to start to affect the shape of the spline or the tooth. So what we're really trying to do is just put a gentle little radius on both ends of the spline, this side and this side, and then we want to put a small radius on the edge tips. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take and put our brushes in there, and we're going to come down through and against and across this. But what's also really important is we have several different sizes of these parts here. So you can see some pretty big differences. So what's becoming more and more powerful with our machine as the economy keeps changing here is people are wanting to stock their parts less and less. So companies are starting to shift from batch process to single part process. And what that means is as companies are getting more and more sophisticated with their inventories, they're starting to want to maybe only make a customer's order for 10 of these or 2 of these or 3 of these, and they want to get those done as quickly as possible, so these batches are starting to shrink. So now what's happening is instead of running 500 of this and then switching over to the other and running 10,000 of that, you're starting to see companies wanting to run 1s and 2s. Our machine, without any tooling or fixturing change, can accommodate either way. The way our machine does that is we can go from one part to the next in just a couple seconds. So really all we're doing is we're selecting the recipe and then we're loading the recipe, but it's all the same tooling and fixturing. So for example, I'll run a couple cycles here real quick and you'll start to understand what I'm saying. So we've already got one of the large spline washers loaded up. It's this big recipe here, so we'll go ahead and run that cycle. So now if we're running a batch, what we would do is we just keep running these over and over and over and over again. So 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever it is, we'll just keep running. But in a single part process, what we'll do now is we'll just change out the parts. We'll throw in maybe the smaller part. Change the recipe. In just a few seconds and we're off and running a different part. Now again, since we're not running a batch process and we're running more or less truly random parts, now we're going to switch over to this really small part. And see, in just a few seconds now we can run, from the big part to what we call the thicker part to the thinner part, and we're changing over super fast. So now what you can see is we can go back and forth from these different parts and we can truly feed the machine with random parts. So what we're starting to see some of our customers do is they'll have, say, a machine of these different parts feeding the deburring machine all at once, and as these parts come at different times, either a robot or a human just calls up the proper recipe for these different parts and just runs them as they come to the machine. So now what you can do is you can run this truly random process or single batch flow. So it creates a whole new situation, unlike a true CNC or any others where you've got dedicated fixturing and tooling for all these different parts. We kind of use common fixturing and tooling for all of these different sizes of parts here. So now you can go through and you can change setup super quickly just by changing the recipe and you can start running these other parts. That's something that's really important today, and I think is nice to see on this machine.